We're live.
Welcome, everyone, to the 22nd podcast of M&M Exhibition Poultry Talking Chickens. We have with us today a friend of ours, Matthew Burnette, from the great state of North Carolina.
North Carolina. You don't say it
North
right.
Carolina. Sorry about that. But we got Matthew with us today, and we're gonna talk about just how he does things, how he got started, about white Plymouth Rock Bantams. Personally, to me, probably some of the finest red pile old English I've ever seen. Matthew bred, and when I decided I wanted into him was about a month after he got rid of him. So, but we're just going to talk about all kinds of things, and thank you for joining us. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and on Facebook. All right, Mr. Lehman, what do you got going? You want to anything you want to say?
Plug, because I did talk to Caitlin today. So sponsored by Rozier's Poultry Supply. You see it on the bottom, rozierspoultrysupplies.com. She's getting overwhelmed, I think, with the Ivamec thing, Breeder's Magic, and all that stuff. So I give her some updates, because we did find out that that's not Ivamec, it's fenbendazole, which is a similar thing, and that's what I'm using now. So she's gotten a lot of calls, people asking how to do it, what we're doing, how often. So I kind of filter it on that. I'm doing it once a week, every 2 weeks, every other week, I guess is how it goes. And I have an auto watering system that I put it in, and they drink there's 10 4x8 dog runs in there, and they drink about a gallon of water, 5 gallons of water a day. So she wanted to know the quantity. I said, well, it's once a day, every other week is kind of what I've been doing. So far, I looked this morning, I haven't got Merrick's in anything yet this year. And that's just unusual. So it's got to be doing something in my mind. Breeder's Magic, I had 3 emails on what was that. And I mentioned that again. Her Breeder's Magic's like a vitamin mix that we use in the chick water and before breeding season. And I actually think I'm going to use it a little bit with show season, back and forth, because the birds get stressed a little bit, and that it can hurt them, is what I'm thinking.
It's got amino acids and everything in it too. Yeah. It's pretty much full spectrum. It's very good stuff.
And it's kind of a orangish color, but it doesn't seem to stain the birds like some things do. Not like a red cell does. So I think that's all I had. ABA stuff we talked yesterday, but standards are getting shipped. Now the individual standards are on the website. Yearbooks coming, getting ready for Columbus. Mike, I forgot to mention Miss Patty Bailey from London, Ohio, donated one of her fine pairs of black silkies to the auction, the ABA auction, which will be, I'm curious to see them, because I've had some silky people get started and they have some troubles, and I always send them to Patty and Melissa Shuckers, because they won't cheat them. That's what I do. These ladies will not cheat you. They'll be fair and honest with you. So Patty's putting one of her, she's probably got the best, her and Marty McGuire, I think, probably got the best black silky bantams out there. They're what I like in a silky. They're not overdone. They're just right. So you can get too much crest, too much this and that. Hers are just right. She's consistent with her breeding, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. And I thank Patty for sending those along at the National. So I know you've got some other birds lined up. So that's about all I have on the updates.
This guy over here on this side, pair of white Plymouth Rock Bantams.
That side. You gotta go that way.
No, well, it's that he's that way to me, and the guy in the red hat.
Yeah, there we go.
And we thank you for it again. It's that covers a lot of our costs on different things for the ABA. To have the donations, sometimes they're really extravagant prices, and sometimes you look at them and think, you paid how much for what? But it's good for us. It's good for the ABA, and it allows people to get some stock, and it's a lot of fun. So we've done it several times. Probably will end up doing it several more times. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing to help support the Bantams, help people get stuff, and they're there. There's no shipping involved. sometimes the spur of the moment, they go, "Ooh, man, look at that," and so they buy them. Other good thing. So, all right, I think with all that, I got a cat outside the window yawning to get in. It's just going to keep yawning. Matthew, tell us how you got started and how long you've been in, and just kind of give us a run up on what's going on with everything.
No. Trying to think when I got started. I was trying to think about some of this, as far as years and dates, and I can't remember all the specifics when it's just like it's fun when you have fun. But I started. My grandparents got me. So I grew up, in northwestern North Carolina. But mom and dad was we grew up in a small subdivision, half-acre lot. And but my grandparents, farmed, and they lived in Southwest Virginia. And my grandmother and grandfather got me a trio of mixed Bantams. And my grandfather, I worked with him to build a place for him, and not really sure how it happened, but it was just kind of a, here you go. When I was a young kid, I was probably 7 or 8, and got to messing with chickens and enjoyed them, and didn't grow up in the hobby. My dad, he did it a lot with me over the years, but it just never was his thing. It was he did it with me in order to spend time together, but he take or leave the birds. And anyways, I got him, and then it took me several years to convince my mother to let me have some chickens at our house. And like I said, we lived in a subdivision, and kind of what fueled it was we had a deck on our house, and my parents decided to replace the deck. And when we tore the old deck down, that was all the wood I needed to start putting together something. So I put together some little pens and got some chicken, just mixed, nothing, just some bantams, and kind of first chickens out of the house. And then there was a gentleman that lived close to me, and I used to ride my bike around, several longer than people ride their bikes now for, around their house. But I used to ride out. There was a guy that he had coaching bantams. And it was the first time I had ever saw someone that had he had white coachins, and all the white was in one pen. He had buff coachins, and they were all together, and black and that was the first, kind of exposure to. These were not good quality coachins, but they were, somebody working, had, at least working on varieties and keeping them. So I got some coaching bantams, and I took those to our county fair. County fairs have about died out down here now. We had county fairs, and they had the way they judged them was just like best bantam cockerel and best bantam cock, wasn't in breeds and varieties. And anyways, I showed my coachings that I had bought there, and I won some ribbons. I think I had best bantam cockerel, and from there it's just been a very slippery slope. Here we are. But yeah. Then I got into Old English. Being in North Carolina, it was kind of like Old English is one thing, and everything else is lumped together as something else. Especially when I was growing up, and I got into Old English, and there for several years, and I was sort of a slow learner. I thought I could have 3 or 4 of everything and raise 10 or 12. It took me a while to learn that I needed to have one or two, varieties and really focus on them, and got into the red pile was always it was that color that you flip through a magazine, or you flip through the Tim and Sheila did the Clanton did the Showbird Journal as color photos, and Henry Harbor was actually a guy from out here. He had got his start in red piles from Bill Wolf, and Henry had a male. He was like 5th Old English at the Jamboree one year in the late 90s, and for a pile male, that was just unheard of. And that was the picture. That was the one picture that was like, that I want that. And I got into red piles, and that was all I had for several years, and did well with them. Went into, I was in college then, and then, kind of bouncing around between. I lived in Kentucky for a couple of years, and Georgia for a couple of years for work, and college kind of bounced around. And I had the birds at my parents' house, and then when my wife and I, got out of college and sort of settled down and bought our place here, it took me longer than I hoped to build a building and, get my setup the way I wanted. I always thought it'd take 6 months, and it took several years, but, I got it together. And then at that point, I just decided I wanted something different. Old English was the only thing I'd ever had, or, really since I and wanted to try something new. And it was, like I said, going to shows growing up down here, it was half of the show barn was Old English or more, and the other half was what we joked and we said I was the meat chickens or the egg chickens or whatever. And I just I wanted to do something else, so I got some Plymouth Rock Bantams, and I got some Wyandotte Bantams, and it was just kind of the sort of exposing myself. It felt like something new, like totally new, and I got excited about it again. And with the piles, like I said, I did well with them, and I still one of probably my favorite breeding variety. But I just I don't know, something new. You feel like you just want to. You kind of get stale or something. So yeah, and I've raised a few things since.
Good deal. Yeah, you're talking about the size, and the first one of the first shows I ever judged was in Anthony's show in South Carolina, and I judged with Steve Beatty, and we got down there, and it's at Clemson. With that ag thing they got there, great big. I walked in
university we don't talk about.
Yeah, we don't. But anyway, orange and white. So anyway, we got down there, and I walk in, and Anthony said, "You okay with judging Old English?" I said, "Yeah, that ought to be fun." The show had like 1,000 birds, and I think 750 of them were. So I thought, yeah. Well, Steve ended up doing everything else, and he come in and he'd come behind me in the Old English. We got all done. But yeah, that's the South. Then it's not quite that way now. There's still a boatload of Old English everywhere, but there are other good representatives, and other things win down there now than what it used to be. So yep. All right, so you got White Rocks. To me, I'm not going to name everybody because I'll leave somebody off and they'll be pissy. But one of the dominant strains of White Rock Bantams are yours. They're absolutely stunning. And I'll name a couple because I see them all the time. John Miles's are wonderful. Big Stoneburgers are really good. And there's other ones. There's some older people that's had them. I could name Craig, and I could name Bruce Sherman. I mean, there's a bunch of them. But for every time and as much as we get to see them, I've always really enjoyed your white chicken, your white meat chicken.
One thing I'll brag on, I think I brag on John Miles all the time. I haven't bragged on you enough, but the consistency. So what we usually see, and I've had rocks were my first breed, so I had White Rock large fowl was the very first thing. I mentioned when the first time I ever judged John's birds when he started out was the consistency across the class, and you definitely have that. I always struggle if you show 4 or 5 cockerels, I have trouble picking one. So that's a good thing. Your birds are very consistent, and that always tells me that you're a breeder. So you're not putting different styles of birds in there to feel yourself out. You've got a style in your mind, and that's what you're going to show, and you're kind of all in on that. So that's kind of the way we are too. We don't our stuff may not look great, but it all looks not great together.
That's what I've always, when I got started, I'd always liked White Rocks, looking at, back through for, years and years. I know Charlie Wayback, Mike Waskey used to ride with Charlie, and that was, back, I remember there was rock bantams that came from Charlie stuff around down here, and just seeing them and through the pictures of, Bruce's stuff, and Kyle Tripp's one of my buddies, seeing Kyle's birds, pictures of them. I always liked them, and I read the good book, and I had this picture of what I want them to look like, wanted them to look like then, and want them to look like now, and I try to. They're better than what I started, I think, so that's good. And but yeah, you mentioned consistent. I mean, I like them to look a certain way, and I think what makes me feel like I've had a good year is if I can show 4 or 5 cockerels and 4 or 5 pullets, and they're all, I don't show them just to hit a number. I want them to be good. But if you ever look at someone judging and they're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, that you say, well, they're either really bad or they're okay.
Well, you're making us work, which we appreciate.
Yeah.
We do the same thing. One year we had put up 20 white coach and bantam cockerels, and not many people believe this, but I had some lady tell me one time, I'm going to beat that white coach of cockerel. I said, well, you better get busy because there's like 20 of them, and we ain't showed the same one yet. And the same one never won. So and it was funny because the ones him and I liked when we're washing them and getting them ready, very rarely ever won. We always got surprised. So that's a good thing that you can get them consistent, and that tells me you're breeding the way you should be breeding. So you're breeding to your interpretation of the standard, which is all you can do, and hopefully everybody else likes that. So
yeah. But yeah, no, that's when you feel like you it's nice when you go and you show and people. I like it when you show consistent birds and someone picks. If they don't pick my style, John's are a little different than mine, and we show against each other a lot. But I think I like it when John may have 1, 2, 3, and then I may have 1, 2, 3. And I think that if you pick one of this one and one of that one and one of this one and one of that one, it's sort of like they're pretty different. So what are you seeing here? So that's sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
Well, that's consistency in judging too. I mean, it's one of the things we were taught early. I mean, if you get, don't put one in between the other ones. If you like that one and that one looks just the same, why are you sticking somebody else in between it? That makes you look like you're not consistent when you're judging either. Now, you may be wrong. That's fine. But at least whoever is there said, well, they don't, like you said, you could say, well, you didn't like my style today, or like my style, not John's style, because John's birds, like yours, are always when you show. They're in great condition. The whites are white. I mean, but they are two different styles, and it's whoever that day, that judge, or if you have two different judges that day, like most double shows, hell, you both bite. Because it's just all according to that preference on that day of that judge. And that's the way to be. You're either all in or you're all out. I mean, whether when the day's over, it's the same stuff. You're taking your stuff home. So you have to make yourself happy on what you showed and why you showed that. So good deal. So how long have you had whites now?
Oh gosh, I haven't probably 6, 7 years now.
Okay.
So I haven't, I got when I got started, I got birds from Bruce Sherman and Kyle Tripp, and I got birds from both of them, and they're both two good friends. I don't talk to Bruce as much now, but Bruce was very helpful when I got started. Kyle's been very helpful. I used to, when I got him, and I was new to him, I sent those guys pictures and I said, what's good and what's bad, and both, very helpful, and good friends with both of them now. And I added the only, Kyle and I, and Bruce, me and Bruce have swapped birds since then, and Kyle and I have swapped birds since then. And then I got a male from Jerry Little in Kentucky. Jerry's one of my good friends, and he had got some birds from Jerry McCarty. So I added a bird in from there, and I kind of got them grouped sort of in my little families, I guess you call them, and then I'll keep them the same, and then I'll try to work on 1 or 2 things a year, and I'll try to put different birds together. But that's I've really enjoyed them. They've been fun.
Good deal. Yeah, that well, we had White Rocks several times, and God, man, well, that's been 20 some years ago.
Yeah,
I think.
We used to show in the old days. It was Kurt Keene, Bruce Sherman, Hugh Burnette, Shelby Harrington.
Yeah.
So the big boys, and we run our mouth, and that's how we got. I called Bruce. I said, "Send me some birds. I'm going to whip their ass." And Bruce did. I think one year I raised, I don't know how many White Rocks. I showed 9 pullets at Columbus, and they were all exactly alike. Maybe a little bit on the young side, but I think I had 3rd place pullet. This was at one of the large, might have been 02. at one of the big shows. And I think there was 50 or 60 White Rock pullets in that class. I know they went down a whole row and come down the other way. And it's funny that you would be tickled shitless to get third, but going against those boys, that was a good thing to even get one in there that placed. There were some birds that didn't place that year that were best of show that didn't even get to place in that White Rock class. So
kind of sounds like that coaching class we had at we had that one year at Greenville. We were all in there, and there was
five best of shows in that class.
In the cockerel class.
That wasn't counting the pullets. There was a couple pullets we had that were they were there too. That's how we got into them. And so it's been a love-hate thing over the years. We always threaten to get them in. I think we have 8 or 10 starred wins on White Rock Bantams, white and bards both. We had some nice bards at one time as well, but single comb birds, and when in those days no heat, you just wasn't kind of a easy thing to keep up here. So I think we may have them again. I still have a love for barred rock bantams. I love Johns. I get down judging Johns, and I got to look at them, and I'm going through every feather and try to find something. And he's probably done as good a job on barred bantams as anybody I've ever known. So he can get a best of breed with a barred bantam every once in a while, and not a lot of people can say that. So, so you've got some serious competition that way. So.
That's what makes it fun.
Yeah, that does make it fun. We loved it in the day. 1 year at Columbus, we won best breed in the rock bantams with a barred cockerel. God love him, old Harry Hallback. He liked that bird, and he didn't care. And I told Shelby, because Shelby was in his heyday then, and I said, man, you probably got 10 White Rocks over there better than that barred. But there's one thing, it didn't happen. I said Harry didn't like them. And Harry picked that barred, but he ran it all the way. We didn't get single comb, but we had best of breed, which was good down there. I mean, down there winning best of breed sometimes is like winning best of show at other places. So,
but he was really a nice barred rock male.
Yeah, he was. And what we had done here, well, might as well tell the story, Mike, since we're babbling on. We're at Connersville, Indiana, in about 2000.
It was so cold.
It was
it was so cold.
Zero. The wind's blowing, just terrible. And Kirk Keene had a half barred, half white male there. And he was telling us what he's going to do. And I said, give me that bird. He goes, why? I said, because I want it. Well, our old friend Dallas Mulholland, Dallas would come to the show in this old 72 Ford pickup truck with the tailgate to go down, and he'd pull out these boards and put up these sand cages. And Dallas is out there 20 below zero trying to sell his extra barred rocks and New Hampshire bantams off in this thing. And I said, Mike, get in there and get me 2 barred rock hens, because we knew
crawl in there, Mike. Go on in there and go through them. There I am, freezing. I'm going through these, handing out a bird, go get all over me, hand out another bird, said, that's good. Thanks, Dallas. Oh, I owe you $10 or whatever it was. Wasn't much.
Those barred rocks were old Harry or Hallback strain. So he had got all his birds from Harry originally. So we took those 2 barred rock hens that didn't look like a whole heck of a lot when we got them, in this half white, half barred male of Kirk's. I took them for a while, and I raised 150. Then I give the trio to Mike, and he raised 150. Then we give, at the end of the season, Mike gave that trio to Craig Schaefer, and he raised 150. So we had all these barred rocks, and with that cross, they were kind of all over the place, but we did pick out about a half a dozen cockerels and I think 8 or 10 pullets. And that was one of those cockerels that ended up winning. So it was the first generation cross of 2 lines that just kind of clicked. And God, we sold a lot of bards. I don't even remember what happened to them. They were here forever, and then it's kind of like lots of things, you just get tired of them. So bards got to be right there to win. They can't be. Sometimes you can win with a white that's a little marginal, but you're not going to do it with a barred. And
the way the barred rock, the reason it first happened was, let's just say the night before that, I had been enjoying malted beverages, spirits quite heavily, and there was a bunch of us together, as we will have a tendency to do, and they're all talking about barred rock males and no tail, and I'm listening and talking, and I remember saying, I could put a tail on a barred rock. And they said, oh, you can't. I said, you watch. So the next day, yes, sir. We went and started. And I'll say one thing. It was half bullshit, and half I kind of thought I knew, because the tail feathering in the barred rock, and people still don't understand. People disagree, but whatever. I did it, so I know it works. I did it twice. It's all the feathering of the female. It's nothing really to do with the male as far as putting the tail length on a barred rock. To me, and there's certain feathers on a female that I don't know how I figured that out, but I found them. And them two hens that looked like absolute shit that we got out of they had that feather. And it worked. I mean, they had tails. And the next year their tails didn't shorten up much. They had tails. So and today, you know, I don't know if it's still a problem because they haven't raised barred rocks in forever. But it's the tail, the males seem to shorten up greatly. It's cockroaches in the tail.
They
Or
have
they
that
don't
real,
finish, one or the other.
the barred feathering has that real narrow sex feather. And if you don't watch, that feather narrows out and you get that stringiness hanging down. And then you get no primary tail feathers. What actually they are is secondary tail feathers. The primaries just kind of go away on them. And something, I know old Ralph, we talked about him yesterday, old Ralph Sturgeon, always said that there's a double gene piling up there that makes them do that. And he put whites back into his bards many times over the years. And I think you have to do that if you get to the point where you lose it. I know John has done a good job of I'm not seeing that in his males, but I tend to like his females a whole lot better than his male birds. So he's got the female line is down on his side for sure. On ours, it was male birds. The male birds were just kind of, they caught your eye, but we used one of the best, Kirk Keene, probably one of the best white rock breeders there was at the time. We used one of his half white, half barred males. So we didn't start with, we didn't start at the bottom. We kind of started up here, but that's our barred rock story. I digress. We had to, I don't think we've told that yet, but I never forget how cold it was that day. We're out there sorting them birds out, and everybody thought we was crazy.
How Kirk was in the trunk of his car, in the trunk, he was in the trunk. But that was a wild time. That might have been the same time with the Black Wyandotte and the Larry Lloyd story, but we weren't even going with it.
Yeah, there you go. Or I did fix a white Wyandotte down there one time, and I think that was the same weekend. So I was talking to Lou Horton, and he had wanted me to go through the class of white Wyandotte Bantams with him. And I said, well, that one up there, that's somebody don't know how to fix their tails. I grabbed the bird out, fixed his tail, stuck him back in here. He goes, Matt, that looks really good. But he goes, that's not my bird. So believe it or not, it wasn't his bird. So he told me whose it was. And it was Shelby Harrington's bird. So I said, Shelby, I got to tell you something. And Shelby and I have been good friends for years. I said, well, I was over there with Lou Horton and we're fixing birds. And I said, I thought it was his. And I grabbed this one out and I fixed its tail. Well, I don't care. Go ahead. That's fine. If it needed fixed, get in there and fix it. Best of show with that white Wyandotte cockerel that year.
Yeah.
So every time I see him, I go, come over. Yeah, we're showing blacks. I beat myself. I said, come over here and fix my tails. So he rubbed it in up until to the end.
Another great.
That's my rambling.
So, all right. So we got the piles down, got the rocks down, and thank you for the. If everything goes right for the pair donating to the ABA National. That's going to be great. I get people asking what's coming, and I'll put that list out pretty soon. But I'm still trying to hear back from a few people to see, because not everybody knows. It's hard to know. You can say, yeah, I want to donate a pair, but you get down to, November and you're going, well, shit. So anyway, so what else we got now? How's the call though?
The call ducks was a short adventure.
Yes, I figured it would be, but I wasn't going to discourage you, son. I'll just let you go on with it.
It's not like you wasn't pre-warned.
No,
Yeah. Well, the price was very nice because it could have, it could have been an
Yeah.
experiment that went another way.
Yeah.
But no, that's still something that's still something I want to do. But it taught me a valuable lesson. You don't you need to be prepared for call ducks.
Yep.
You don't get call ducks and try to make them work with what you have. You have to be ready
Yep.
for them. And the it took me more time to take care of 3 call ducks this winter than it did to take care of however many Plymouth Rocks and Wyandotte. I just didn't have a setup for them. But they were. That's still going to be something I'm going to try. I'm going to try those sometime.
There you go. Yeah, that breaking ice and stuff. You had a cold winter too. You had ice
them-
and
We
every
did.
day. Yeah, baby, that's
Getting them,
fun.
Getting them before winter is a good sign because you can get them in the spring and think, oh, these aren't too bad. I take the hose out there, and believe me, I've done it. So your buddy Tyler Murray, he'll tell you, and his wife now is the call duck person. So he's been building pens and building pens and building pens, but he learned a long time ago how to build them and how to manage them, especially grow outs and all that whole process. We had Dustin Wilson on here, and he's done that as well. So there's people that are very successful with it, and I admire them. But like you said, I could take care of a barn full of chickens in the time it took me to go out there and piddle with my 8 or 10 call ducks.
Yeah, it was a big learning experience for me. I wasn't prepared for them, and I had when I brought them home from the show there in December, I didn't, I had these plans to build some of these raised pens like Dustin and Tyler and all of them have, and I just never got around to it, and I don't have as much time as I used to do things like that, and so I had to, I got home and I was like, what am I going to do? So I drug my daughter's plastic swimming pool out, and I said, yeah, it's December, she won't need it, and I could replace it, and I'll use this in the meantime. And it's amazing how three things that small can make that big of a mess in just
In 5 minutes.
in 5 minutes. Yeah. And they would, it was an everyday thing. I would put I would put fresh water every day, and they get in and they clean themselves up and they look great for about 5 minutes. And then, and then the water gets dirty, and then they get dirty, and they couldn't they couldn't get in the pool on their own. So I had to makeshift a little ramp for them to get in the pool and get out of the pool. And anyways, that was a short-lived venture, but I'm going to get back into that when I have more time to.
We forgot to mention because I was the ABA judges licensing committee chairman there for a while, and you come in right there at the end of my term. So you're a apprentice judge and going to try to jump into that ring. Tell us what your experience was with the program and how it's going.
Yeah, well, it's actually, I got into the program last fall, and I know it's going through some changes now. I just talked to somebody this morning about I need to reach out to Terry and kind of see what you all want me to do, since I'm kind of in the middle. But I had started doing, clerking, and then we, all of our shows were shut down, January on. So we lost. So I haven't showed since I saw you, and I went to Anderson in January, but then we were shut down. So I haven't been anywhere this year. So I've got a lot to catch up on. But no, I like a lot of the ideas in it. It was just for me, being down here, the shows have changed a little bit in terms of numbers and how things are, but call ducks, Jimmy Sorrell's show, my buddy up in Morganton, there were 2 waterfowl last show I went to, then I go up to Greenville and there's 500 call ducks. Yeah, so it's, that was my thing about the call ducks. I like them for one. And I, whether they're, for me to raise, that's something I have to get, but I wanted to have them to, I've found, and I've had a few, I've had the Rocks Old English, but I raised Moderns one year, and I've raised Wyandotte Bantams, and I got rose combs and Wyandottes now. But having something here and seeing it every day, it just helps me. It's something to. There's one thing to read about it in a book, and there's another thing to see it and see good ones and handle good ones, and talk to breeders that that you respect, and so yeah, I'm excited about it. I've got a lot to learn, but I'm excited about it. I like the idea of judging some of the junior shows, and being able to, I want to. Obviously, for us, I think I need to travel a little bit just for our junior shows are not what I saw kind of even up in your area and out into the Midwest. 4-H is just not that big of a thing down here anymore. If we have a junior show, it's lucky to have 50 birds. It's probably 48 Old English, so it's just getting out. But that's something I really want to do is get out and see things that you just don't see because I want to get it right. You're not going to please everybody, but I want to get it right. And I don't want to, I don't want to show up and then, all of a sudden, okay, here you go. Now you're on AOCCL and there's, 100 coach, and you haven't messed with them, so that's, but yeah, no, I'm excited about it. I'm going to try to get up your way a couple times, some bigger classes. And
I'll jump in at Columbus because that's usually they are looking for clerks there because and sometimes you don't have to do the whole day if you don't want to, but if there's something you want to work on, just tell Newt and Tim before, and they'll get you in there and make sure your judge you're with knows you're an apprentice. Or even, I'll tell you what, up there, I've had them several times in the junior show. We got 2,000 birds, and I've had apprentices. John Miles worked with me in that a couple times. In the junior show, because the quality in that junior show is better than a lot of open shows. And one thing we talked about with Bill yesterday, where it went out to the membership and we didn't get any negative feedback back on it, but to have a list of judges that will work with the apprentice judges at a show where they're not judging, I think is going to be a great benefit because I think you're going to pick up more stuff. So we're going to take 3 or 4 hours and go through all 7 classes with you. And probably not handle them, but we'll go down through them and see what we're seeing and go from there. And I think that'll give you more insight than sometimes clerking amounts to filling out paperwork and correcting mistakes and not actually learning from a judge. And some judges are better teachers than others. We found that out when we were in it. And we actually clerked a lot before it was ever a requirement. I mean, we always go to a show kind of bored. Well, we go clerk for Harry or go clerk for Earl Jones or somebody. And it was always a good time. And you always learn something every time, something different. So I think that's going to help you guys. And we just need to get more people out there working. Mike will tell you, as many calls as we get now, you can't wait till a month before the show to get your judges anymore because most of us are stacked. And a couple years out, even in the fall and spring, where we have a lot of shows. So we want to get some new guys working. I know John just completed his. He was one of my proteges. Jimmy Sorrells, another guy. I think he's going to be a great judge because they had that passion to go learn the stuff that they didn't have, and that's what you got to do. And
Sorrells better be a good judge because I got his butt judging in San Diego.
There you go.
So he's going out too.
Jimmy's. We've recommended him a bunch because of traveling. We went to Alabama with him, and Louis Cunningham and I, and Louis recommended Jimmy to a bunch of shows. So I know he has trouble getting away sometimes, but if he's willing to travel, that's the thing. There was a time when I thought I had to judge them all, so I went to all of them, and not so much anymore. But if you got that mentality, you actually. It's one of those things, the more you do it, the better you're going to be at it. So do as many fairs and things as you can because you'll get better at it as you go.
Don't be picky. You can't be picky when you start. I mean, you just go and you don't, there are certain people that we really enjoy judging with. There's other people you'll find that, you're judging with them. And there's other people, truthfully, that you just can't stand to judge with. And don't ever believe what anybody else tells you. Be open and go. Because maybe I don't get along with them or Matt for different various reasons, we can judge together. But that's not our preference. But you can't be that way for a long time. You got to go see. Now, if you find someone that you can't and you ask them who's judging and they say, I'd rather not. You don't have to tell them why, but I'd rather not, or, you can find somewhere else to go. But you have to work. You have to throw a lot of birds and you have to do it often, especially when you're just starting out. So do a couple spring shows, maybe do a few fairs. You'll have the problem that we have is you like to show too.
Mhm.
And you really get to visit people when you show. A lot of times when these one-day shows, you don't get to visit with hardly nobody. So you're in and you're out. And you like to show. So you got to sometimes put that showman's hat aside, and you just have to go. Book a month. If your family can stand to have you away, or you can get off for a month, and it's October, I'm not showing. I'm going to judge here and here and here and here. Because if you don't, you do a show in the spring and a show in the fall, then you can't learn the consistency on how you do things, how you move, and how many birds you can throw on a great day, how many birds what is comfortable for you on how many you can do, and do them right without just pretending you're looking at them. You do the things you're supposed to do. So that's kind of a word of advice I think a lot of people should take. You have to learn what your limitations are, learn what you're good at, in your mind, which you're not nervous. And like Matt has said many times, when you walk in there and you're thinking, I can do these, but I'm not, you don't have the confidence in yourself, then find yourself a judge that and you go do that. Have them go with you, not that time, of course, but like you're standing somewhere and Matt with medium duck, me with all waterfowl, except, I'd raised them, but never paid a hell of a lot of attention to them. But when Tim Bowles was done judging, when Louis was done judging, I think I've done it with Danny. It's like, you done? They'd say, yeah, I'm done. Can you walk with me through Cayugas? Yeah, they'll be glad to. So that gives you that. Well, the next time, that means maybe you're not going to, you still don't really want to do them. But when you have to do that class, you could have more confidence in yourself than that. Yeah, I can do it. So, and that's all I can say. You have to do it to learn it. You just can't.
Yeah, it's not like magically you pass your test to get your license and here you are. I wished it was that way, but that is one of the goals that I had when I took this over, was to try to make that transition from the program into the showroom a little better. And that was with doing the 2 junior shows. We had so many judges that we just turned them loose, and they didn't really have that whole, I got to pick all 7 classes, I got to get a champion. So that junior show thing kind of gets you in that mode. And I guess we're kind of more spoiled here with bigger junior shows, and we've had to adjust numbers a little bit around the country. But I think that helps you. I think this working, besides just clerking, working with the judge at a show, and we'll have a list of the ones that are willing to do that, will help you too, because you'll pick up some things from all those. And then you get done and get your test passed and get to working. What we did drive into, I think I did with you too, is that scale of points. So the new tests are geared to we're not trying to trick you. I hated some of the old tests in the old days because they were trying to trick you. I want you to know it, and everything in there, every question, I always tell everybody, every question we ask is something I would expect you to know if you're judging my bird. So there's nothing in there that I don't think you shouldn't know. You're never going to remember it all. That's why we carry the book with us. I don't know how many times I'll go get it out, and I'm not ashamed to go get it out, because you try to pick up modern leg color from memory sometime, and you've got 14 colors there, and they all got different leg colors. So I'll go refresh my memory, and that's what it's there for. We don't expect you to know every little thing, by memory. So you always have your standard with you, and you can always go look that up. But I think you're going to do great. You got to have that eye for birds, and you got to be able to explain why you like it. I've talked a bunch. I hate I like, and that's just because I was told that you don't tell me what you like. I want you to break that bird down by parts and points and tell me how you got to that, that decision, and right or wrong. And you'll find out down the road on Champion Row. Sometimes you don't agree, but your job at the end of the day is to find the best bird there. And it doesn't make a difference if Mike picked it, you picked it, or I picked it. We want to find the best bird there and give it a fair shake and go through that process. So I look forward to you getting done and showing under you and looking over the cages and giving you some grief.
Give me a hard time. No,
Yeah,
I've tried to do. Like I said, it was for me. It's kind of unfortunate that our shows were all canceled this spring. But I had like when I went to Anderson in January, I clerked with John. I reached out to Chad Satterfield. I said, "Hey, can I clerk with somebody? I don't care who." I said, for me, I don't want to clerk when. I said I don't want to clerk when they're judging my birds. Let me clerk something else. But
so you should do that. Yeah.
He let me clerk with he had John Beamer do my birds, and then I clerked with him the rest of the day, and John was really helpful, and I asked him questions and met him a couple of times. Super nice guy,
and a fairly new judge who's been through the process, so
very good.
And I remember when he was doing his judging testing, I didn't know him, but he was looking at White Rock Bantams in Knoxville. And I think he picked some good ones. If I remember that, it didn't shake out that way in the real show, so he should have judged the other day. But Tommy Edmund, Tommy is one of my good friends. He's a old English guy forever. He raises Seabrights now, and Tommy was I don't get to see him very often, but he was in Anderson, and I bugged him 5 or 6 things. I said, let's go look at rose combs. Let's go look at, because I really respect him. I think Tommy's he's a heck of a good judge and a good guy too. And he took the time, and he wasn't judging that day. We looked at his Seabrights. I get to see good Seabrights where I'm at pretty often, but we looked at his, and we looked at we looked at rose combs, and we looked at the ambers, and so I'm trying to do that. Find people that that there's.
Yeah, I think that's going to be your benefit. Is even just a breeder. Sometimes if you got anybody down there that raises something you don't see a lot of, and just go to their place and talk to breeders. I know we've done that over the years. Stuff I wasn't particularly interested in, but it's always good to see how they do it. And I think every time Mike and I went, we picked up something. One of the things I miss dearly, and I talking to him today with Bill Wolf. When we went to Connorsville years ago, there was a time on Saturday when everybody that wanted to went out to Bill's house, and he would sell a few birds. And there was, like Michael said, there was maybe 100 people that would leave the show and drive out to Bill's house and just to go see us set up and that's how we learned about Old English, because I had them, but I never had them, never liked them. I didn't want nothing to do with them. But watching all them guys run them pullets down in a 50 by 60 pen to buy them, and Bill always sit back with us on a bucket, and he says, "Now watch." He goes, "They're going to run down all them little tiny black Old English pullets," and he says, "All they're going to live me with is these big old females." He goes, "That's what I raised my males out of anyway." So we would watch them all get out there and fight over what was there, and I miss that, because there was a whole lot of learning, and our kids were little when we go out there, and they loved to go to see all the cats and all the different birds, and to see 1,500 Old English in one place.
And dubbing.
All black.
Remember the time we did the dubbing?
Give a dubbing seminar out there, and he would take the combs when he was done with them off and feed them to the cats. And them little girls just had a fit. They go, "Oh, that's sick." And
except for our 2 little girls, and they just went, yeah,
because they loved Old English. So Emily had Blue Old English for a long time. So yeah, it's to get around to people's places is a good thing.
We didn't talk much about Old English. You got Neil coming up, so you don't need to ask him. Whatever Neil says is right. But with Old English,
you're making big points.
Oh man, you're making points with Neil.
But Neil's been around it. I'm close to Neil. He's a great guy too. But with Old English and dubbing, man, I've saw that's one thing I never liked doing it. I always disliked it, but I felt like they looked good when I got done with them. But it still doesn't mean it was something I liked or enjoyed doing. But I always, every year, I go to shows and I see people ruin good birds with bad dubbing. And you see it, it's kind of like when you see it, it catches your eye, and you're like, you forget to look at how good the bird is. You just see that. And then, but what I always did is I would, my earliest hatch, birds of Old English. I just had BBs the last few years, and I would always keep a handful around that I wasn't going to keep or I wasn't going to do anything with it. Every year, like even though I'd done it, I felt like I needed to go through my whole routine. I needed to get my old towel. I needed to get my scissors. I needed to, and I kept some just to do them. And I would, do a few. And I felt like other guys, I'm sure they just pick them up and go through them. But for me, I needed to do it every year. And
me too. That's what I do. And then I got smart and started taking mine over to Wolf and have him do them.
I always give Bill credit because I don't know if you remember Daniel McDaniels. He was a good friend of ours, but he showed Blue Old English forever. And Daniel was the best dubber there was. His birds were perfectly dubbed, or they probably got dubbed right here. So I would always send them. I said, well, if you can't get Daniel to teach you, go to Bill. But Bill taught Daniel how to do it. But Daniel is just a magician with an Old English comb. He could, he's just better at it than I ever was because I'm used to dubbing moderns. That one's pretty easy. I can't hardly screw them up. But with the Old English, I'll admit, I was never very good at it. And I'd get them done and I'd look at them birds and I thought, oh my God, I just ruined that one. So yeah,
that's one thing I recommend is that. And then another thing people always ask me is about washing white chickens. Everybody wants to know how you wash a white chicken. They say, how do you get a white chicken clean? And I say, well, you don't let it get dirty. And I really do. I get my birds down to as few as I can in a pen. I separate out males way before anybody else does.
Early. Yeah. White coaching same way. They're not running together very long, and then they're out.
They when they start putting in their final feathers, if you have roost poles and birds, going underneath the poles and getting crapped on, you'll have and if I see something like that, if I see a bird get really dirty, I'll grab it and bring it and wash it. And I won't, shampoo it up, but I'll wash it out before it sits that way for months. But I keep my pens very, very clean, because I just found you have to for me. And so I'm serious about that. But then I've tried anything and everything to wash white chickens in. If it's out there, I've tried it. I've had people tell me, oh, these, dog shampoos and blah, blah, blah. I don't really do anything special. Just people always ask, I tell them the same thing. I use Tide liquid laundry detergent. I'll use a cap of Miss Stewart's bluing in about an 18-gallon. For me, I feel like the bluing kind of makes them pop. It kind of just has but I try to wash them on, white birds. Wednesday is my, when I set up my schedule for work, I try to reserve Wednesdays from, about 5 a.m. till 10 a.m. And I try to get up, try to wash chickens on Wednesday morning. I found, at least for me, it'd be better a couple days earlier, probably to let them come back to feather, but then you got to keep them clean.
We do ours usually on Tuesday.
Yep, Tuesday's been used to always do it on Wednesday, but Tuesday's worked good for us now because I don't know, we're going to have to do a video. We have these pigeon breeder cages that, since I don't use them for breeding pigeons much anymore, we have found they're great to put white birds in and let them dry and stay clean until they go to the show. It's got a row in the middle where the feeder and water is, so they can just get their head in there and get a drink and get something to eat, but they can't wallow in it, which I think helps with white birds, because white cochins tend to get even a pellet or a mash or a crumble. They get that crap all over the front of them after they've been wet and in there. So these work really good. And you're right, the Tide. So there's two things with Tide and Martha's bluing. It has a brightener in it, and that's why it makes them pop, because that brightener bonds to that white, and you can take a black light to them and they'll glow. So we've talked about bluing before. You got to be real careful with it because you can do too much. But that brightener makes the birds pop, and you can tell the ones that's been used in and the ones that haven't. And Dustin even said with the call ducks, you'll see them swimming, them ducks, in that blue water. The same deal with them. It'll take that little dinge that a call duck or a duck feather has and make it pop. So we get that question all the time, and we're actually going to do it the next time we wash birds when we show. We're going to take and video the whole thing from beginning to end. But you're right. Found that Tide, because I used to make Tide, that's one of the reasons, but Tide with bleach alternative, or Tide Oxy now it's called, has all those chemicals in there that eat up those organic stains. So you have to always keep the bird clean. Number one, it's not going to be a miracle worker, but if you happen to get an accident or something on them, it will take those organic stains right out of it, and then put that brightener on it. And it's got enzymes in there that eat dirt. Mike and I will tell you that after washing, we'll wash all the white birds. Then if he's got a big black cochin that needs washed, we'll stick them down in that water. That Tide on a black bird, you wouldn't think they're that dirty, but that Tide strips that dirt out of that water to where we pull that big black up out of there. That water's like mud, and it just strips the dirt right out of them. So you don't see it so much on a white bird because they don't probably get that dirty, because we don't let them get that dirty, but those blacks are out dusting and rolling in it and everything else. And it just amazes me how much dirt is in there after we washed one of them big black coaches, or even the Bantam coaches, dark colors.
Yeah, I like the high efficiency Tide laundry. It doesn't suds up as much.
Low suds,
it doesn't suck all the oil out of the feather like
Nope.
some of your shampoos do. And I still, I'll rinse the birds in plain water, and then I'll rinse them I'll add a little glycerin. I buy vegetable glycerin by the gallon, and I'll add that to kind of help put a little moisture back in them. But I get that question all the time. How do you what do you do? Do you use this dog shampoo or whatever? And I've tried it, and it doesn't do any better than the
Well,
Tide.
we've had with the dog and horse shampoo, it actually made them worse because feathers and fur are two different things. And I used to use one years ago. It was Hart's Mountain White Dog Shampoo. So it was, my brother-in-law showed West Highland White Terriers, and that's what they used to wash the West Highland White Terriers. But the thing it had in it that the Tide does was that brightener. So it would just take a dingy looking dog and brighten it up. But I think it's formulated for fur and not feathers. And the Tide thing was by accident. I just had it here. And that once I started using it, the old Tide Oxy, because of that brightener, we kept using it. Now we do throw just a scoop, maybe a Boratine in there in ours. I tell them it's just for medicinal purposes, but there was a few people that used to wash in that alone. It's tougher on the feathers than what Tide is. The Tide HE system is a low sudsing for these low sudsing washing machines, so you don't have to use as much vinegar and stuff to get them rinsed, where the old formulas were a little more clingy and a little harder to get the suds out of them. With these, 3 or 4 rinses in there and you're done. So it makes a big difference.
But the thing about keeping them clean, I mean, it doesn't, if you've got a white bird and it gets really, really dirty, you won't, it's done. You just won't, you won't get that out.
Nope.
But I enjoy that's one of the things, wash it and whatever, condition. I enjoy. I'll have to see how. This will be one thing I'll have to force myself to work on, as far as becoming a judge, because I'm a condition. I'm a freak. I want them to be, spotless. If I have, birds with little nicks and things, I won't show them. But it's just, I know in the overall sense of things, sometimes you see other.
You got to keep that point scale in your head. So it's only 10 points. And what we find, a lot of people will judge on condition, but then sometimes you end up with bird. You got to remember that type first. And but Wilbur was a good one back in the day. And Harry, don't think too much about condition just because the bird's all slicked up and pretty. Always go type, color, condition, because condition's your last consideration. And that's easy to say, hard to do, because you'll see some stunning birds, but then you got to, in that little calculator in your head where you're breaking down that 100 points, you got to keep it in perspective. And I know old English people are the worst because that little nick isn't that big of a thing, but they have a fit about it. And I've judged birds that have had that little nick. Well, why did you pick that one? I said, because he's hard. He's like a rock, and he's got more type than that big old boat tail thing you just told me was in condition. So you got to be able to justify and keep it in perspective. And it takes a little while to get that, because
Hey, but you're right. I mean, it's like growing up and with all the old English guys. What have you been told since you were this big? As oh, he's done. He's got a nick, or he's like old English. Males were terrible to get a little nick out of a sickle feather or something on the end.
And yet, how many points is that? Is what I always ask. If it's a half a point, I'll kiss your butt in the square. So I'll take that one over one that's way overdone or doesn't have a nice body. I mean, Old English, I can tell you when I got a hold of it whether I'm going to like it or not, and I ain't even looked at it yet. They just have that feel to them, and after handling about 10 million of them, you kind of get it in your mind, and especially if you get to a show where you got like 40 colors. Because Old English is one of the breeds that are not the same. Red piles are this way, BBs are this way. You would think we'd have a consistent type, but that's one that's been bred because you get so many numbers and all those colors. Everybody's went their own little way with them. So very tough class.
Yeah, I mean, in the consistent thing, you got to pick what's there, right? And when I hear this comment a lot, is like, oh, you look at Champion Row and the black looks like this, the BB looks like this, the white looks like this. That's how they are. There's not, you can't, you're not going to go in the BB reds and find something with the same type as the whites. You can't pick the same type. They're just, that's something, being able to work through kind of, what your style is and how it varies between the birds. But Old English are very different from one another. They'll encroach on being a different breed in some of the different varieties.
The colors are very different. Him and I had brown reds for years. The brown reds always tend to be a little softer feather. Brown reds and Birchins, because of what they use to make them, I would guess, but they're just a little softer feathered than maybe a black or a BB. And Randall Brown down in where was he from? Mike Jordan.
Georgia.
He was in Georgia. Randall had them that weren't that way. They were hard as a rock, and I haven't seen too many to this day that Randall had Wheatons and brown reds that were hard, and that's probably my biggest fault with whites, Wheatons, brown reds now is that they're just a little bit softer than the other colors.
I think I think Old English have got at least the last few years. I hear a lot of times guys that have been in the hobby for a while talk about it, not just Old English, but other breeds. They'll talk about they're not what they used to be, or they're not the old school rock, or they're not the old school Wyandotte. And I've not been around long enough to really say, but the pictures I've saw of some of those, I don't know if we want to go back to that. I think a lot of the.
We talked yesterday. Old English is one. If you look at, I'd go back to the 50s, and Mike remembers Jack Yoder and all those guys with their BBs. Totally different bird. We did get to a point there in the 80s and 90s where we were way overdone. So I talk about overdone silkies. We had overdone Old English. We had Old English with tails that just went way out, and I think they've come back a little bit that way. I don't see as many overdone ones as I used to. I think the judges aren't picking them because if you've got one that's got a tail spread that wide, guys I've got on them, I said you have legger and tail spread in these Old English. You don't have Old English. I mean, if you look at the standard picture and the shillings of Old English, you're not going to like any of them because they got a little pitch tail. Yeah, so.
But
I think it's a breed that.
I think they've come back. I mean, there was a push to add a lot of feather, and they had too much feather. And at Old English, balance is the big thing, and you got to have the tail and the feather has got to match the bird. And that there for a while, we put so much. I mean, like you'd see cockbirds do. Cockbirds would win a lot more because they would shorten up and lose some of that feather, and they were better balanced.
Especially BBs.
Yeah, BBs, blacks were the same way. They had so much feather, and but I think they've got and I've heard people have made the comment to me, old school rocks or old school Wyandottes. Like you look at like black Wyandottes today versus black Wyandottes 30. That's not what we want to go back.
I can testify. So I started with black Wyandottes in '74. They were god awful. You could not get out of the best of variety. It was whites and silver laced. Even the partridge were bad back then. And the whites have always been fairly decent, pretty solid type, but the blacks did not get good until the 90s, did they, Mike? they didn't even get out of the, I mean, you didn't even get out of the variety class until the 90s. So the blacks come way on in the 90s, 2000s up to now where you got some of the, I mean, some of the Colby's, Harris's birds that I see pictures of, I'm like drooling because it took forever to get there because we started with crap. I've got pictures of my birds in the 70s and they'd make you sick. They got a big old beefy comb. Bill Ziegler, we talked about this yesterday. Bill Ziegler, Tim from down in West Virginia was mentioning Bill Ziegler. Well, I got
Ballinger.
Penn Ballinger. I got my buffs and blacks from Bill, and then I got some chicks from Russell Minnick. Oh, I mean, horrible. And if you go back to the good thing about having all these ABA yearbooks, you can go back and look at it. And the black Wyandottes until the late 90s really come on. You had Ron Simpson, Art Lundgren, Mike and I that were showing. I mean, we had in 98, we had 136 blacks, I think. And up to that time, that's the biggest black class there ever was. And I don't know that number's been beat yet.
But there was 1,000 Wyandotte Bantams in 98.
Yeah, there was 1,000 and only 136 blacks. I think there was 600 whites. Does that sound right? I have to go back and look it up.
Because Best of Breed was a white, Reserve of Breed was our black, who what Reserve Rose come clean legged.
And the amazing thing about that show with that, you talk about both those birds. Jeff judged them, and Jeff's old school judge, but both those birds come out of trios. So that means there was another pullet back there just as good or real similar out of both those trios. But he pulled both those birds at that show. There was 890, I think, Wyandotte Bantams that he judged in a 3-day show. So it took him 2 good days to get them all judged. Him and Earl Jones was his clerk. I'll never forget it because he wore Earl out. They would move birds around. And probably the greatest judging example I ever seen. When you say, Mike, because we're down there, that's all we had was Wyandottes in them days, and we're down in that aisle, hawking him the whole time, and he knew it. And that was an amazing show, and I'm glad that video was able to be resurfaced because I don't think I'd ever got to see it that we put up a couple days ago. But that was a tough one. But you're right. I don't think we go back to the old days. Most of these birds are better now than what they were then. I think. The only one that hasn't changed is moderns. A modern from the 1900s and the 1800s look just like a modern does now. They haven't messed with that type. It has been fairly consistent. So a good modern then that would win would win these days.
You mentioned trios. That's the thing I really enjoy about the time. Anytime I get to go up north is being able to show trios. I think it's and I try to put time into it when I'm picking out my birds.
You have to.
I try to pick out females that a really good male, and then and females that are identical. Combs, style, type, everything. Yep. And I wish that was something that I could maybe get started down here. I like it. It's a whole new way of putting birds together to show it. I think it's cool. I wish we could get into that. It's
old school because that's what we've come up with. And so I can tell you when we first started, we didn't do best of variety, reserve variety. We did best of variety, best opposite sex of variety. So if a cockerel won, then it had to be a hen or a pullet for the second place bird. There was no way around it. Columbus is the one that changed that. Clell one time told them, we ain't doing that no more. We're picking best of breed, reserve of breed. And the APA and ABA wasn't too happy about it. Best variety, reserve variety. That's what they started doing because as I can testify, they always call me 2 pullet Matt, but there's lots of times when I'll have best of variety, reserve variety on 2 cockerels or 2 pullets because they're that close. And that's definitely an advantage for a guy like you that puts 5 consistent cockerels in there. And we're trying to figure out which one's the best. Well, there's still 4 other birds in there that are damn good. So they have an opportunity to compete with everything else. So then you don't have a really good male bird and a shitty female as a reserve of variety. You might have 2 really good male birds or 2 really good females. So I give Clell a lot of credit because when he did, I remember when they did it, and we still do it in rabbits. They still pick best opposite sex of variety and best opposite sex of breed. They don't never go with 2 males or 2 females. So that was a big change. And they've always been big up here for trios. So because of a lot of the old time breeders being here in the Midwest. But it used to be, they said you were a true breeder if you could put down a display. Well, to do that display, you had to do a trio. Well, then they got to where 7 birds. I'm not a big fan of that myself, but I like to see you actually go pick out that trio, because to get them 2 pullets to match, that's not as easy as everybody thinks it is.
That's what I like too. It's not your 2 best pullets. You know,
They have to match.
And that's, to me, it's like you're picking. You know, you've got, and I'll show, if I come up, I'll show a display. I'll show and I usually don't show many old birds in the rocks, really, because they're not good enough to beat the young birds. They might, but they probably shouldn't most time. But I like the trio. It's like it's a whole different thing. It's picking out birds that match and birds that's going to show the same and act the same. And so I enjoy that. We do the 7 bird thing down here, and I never show a display. I only, I never enter 7. I try to show, if I can, I try to show like 5 cockerels and 5 pullets, and that's, what I'm after. But anytime I'm able to come, to Greenville or somewhere, then I'll enter, I'll put a trio, and then I'll do 1 cock and 1 hen, and they're more just to check the box, because I don't have birds that should, I don't show nothing that's, missing feathers and everything, but they're probably not going to beat the young birds in rocks. But
it's definitely coming.
Trios are fun.
It's coming back a little bit. I see more people that are interested in that and interested in the breeding end of it that want to show trios, or if they're just starting out. I said, if you want to do it, you need to put down a display. We got these guys, Ray Dillon and Doug, up there with the buttercups now. I said, don't just show a couple of them. So I think Doug went over the barrel. I think he entered 40 this weekend down at White River. So, but you have to, if you got an oddball breeder variety, you got to put enough of them down there where you got to judge them. And that's with anything. I don't care if you got White Rocks or White Wyandottes. If you put 7 or 8 of them in there, definitely your style is going to come through, and the judge is going to see that. If you do 1 cockerel and 1 pullet, you could get missed. And so that's my rant.
Keith LeGrand. That was Keith LeGrand, and when black coachings always won and white coachings didn't, and pretty soon he bred good blacks too, but his whites, he would show 25 or 30 of them. And so pretty soon you got to looking, well, that's like us. He didn't show 1 cockerel, we'd show 5, 7. Next show, 5, 7. Well, then finally, that's how you get someone. That's how you get a trend reverse.
Attention. Yeah.
And to get attention and get a trend reverse of always going with the black, because there'd be 4 or 5 whites or 2 or 3 whites. That's 1 real good white, and then you've got, but I got these blacks. Reverse the trend. Enter more, raise better, wash them, condition them, show them, make the judge work. And pretty soon, people start noticing. Dead silent.
I thought you cut out on me.
Yeah, I thought you.
He just said that profound statement, and we're all in such awe.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, there's a I've said it before.
No, he's sitting there talking, and I see Ed Miller sitting there spouting that shit off to us when we were kids, and we're like, yeah. You know how much it cost to enter 7 birds. That was our concern back then. So, and even before our time, they had what they called a pen, which was a big breeders award. And Jeff talked about it a little bit, but like at the turn of the century, it was a male and 3 females, and that was a pen. And that was like at Madison Square Gardens. That was the most prized thing you could win, was champion pen of your breeder variety, because I know how hard it is to put 2 together. I couldn't imagine the difficulty of getting 3 exactly alike.
You see the old advertisements where you would send a letter to someone to purchase birds, and they would advertise them by pen. How they showed them. So that's
we used to get you don't see them now, but Mike's friend up in Holland, Wade Fullington, they would send out a hatching egg list or a chick list every year, and that's what they were by, pen 1. was this male, and they'd have a picture of him, and sometimes not even a picture, because that was unheard of in the day, because you'd have had to spend the money to go to the printer. But they'd have a description of the male, a description of the females, and this is, you can buy the eggs out of this pen or that pen. And, you know, even Thompson and some of the big names, they put out these beautiful, I've got several around here, these beautiful catalogs with all their breeding pens and you know, which ones do you want, and the different, I think Hallbacks did that at one time too. They had their catalogs and stuff. So that was a big thing. We've kind of, with the, I still remember the days when you had to write a letter and wait for it to come back, because heaven forbid we'd have to make a phone call, and that was a long distance charge, and my mom would just have a shit fit when she got the phone bill back, and I had 3 hours to this guy, 3 hours to that guy. So we didn't call as much as what we probably do now with its free long distance, but you'd wait for that letter and wait for that letter and wait for that letter, and then they had the birds, and then you had to figure out how you're going to get them, because we didn't have shipping. You could ship it on Delta Dash or on a train, but it cost a fortune, more than the birds were worth. So you had to either have somebody pick them up for you. God love Bill Wolf, because he was a bird courier for lots of people running around. And yeah, it was just a little harder to get them than what it is now. Now, if you want something, you pretty much, I mean, we talk about it all the time here. Everybody's starting at third base instead of back at square one, like we kind of did. You can get better birds. You can get better birds to start with. So that puts you a little higher up on the success ratio. And that's probably why we have a lot more fanciers, because they hang in it a little longer now. All right, Mike, we're at 116. Anything else you got to add, or anything else you want to ask Matt while we got him on here?
Matt, did we leave anything out, buddy?
We tend to ramble off. We ramble off on other subjects. So
no, this was good. Thanks for, you know, my dad used to tell me when I was growing up, he said, you know, different things like you'll know when you made it. And when Mike reached out and asked if I wanted to be on here, that's when I knew that I had made it. So thanks for letting
Number one on our book, baby. You're number one.
At least you took the call. We got a couple of them that's avoiding us because they're afraid of it. My purpose was to get everybody on here and document it, because, you know, now with the technology, there's a whole list of people I wish we could have talked to over the years and had some of their insight, and I think it would have been some value. So we're hoping down the road that and we can keep going for a while. And we're on number 22 and got one more tomorrow, and then we've got a couple next week. So we keep going as long as we can find people that want to talk. If not, then you got to listen to him and I.
To that point, I have a project for you, Matthew. It seems that a guy that lives pretty close to you that raises seabrights doesn't think he'd have anything worth saying when I ask him to come on here. Do you think you could try to can you bribe him? Can you rattle his chains? Because God knows I ain't got a damn thing of mine he'd want.
He's like the Howard Hughes of chickens, because everybody goes, who's got the best seabrights? I said, Craig Fields, Tom Carey. Get a hold of one of them. Well, he'll never talk to me. I said, well, he's kind of busy guy. This is not his full-time gig, but yeah, I think he would be a great one to get on here, because he's not well known because he doesn't show all over the States. But God, Mike and I both drool over his birds every time we handle them. So, and he's another one. He's never one out of condition. They're always perfect when he brings them.
Yeah, Craig's another one. Craig's a great guy. He's one of those that you kind of have a love-hate relationship when you see him show up at the show. It's good to see, but it's now my day just got harder. But no, he's good, and he you know, he shows good birds. He keeps them in good condition. Silvers are phenomenal, I think.
And it's not the easiest breed to raise either. So you know, just that alone, he's done phenomenal with. But yeah, we'll get him on here eventually. Some of these people are going to have to twist their arms a little bit.
Yeah, I know he's made the comment. Craig has got we got a good mutual for Howard Myers. You probably know Howard. He came over on the Ark, and Howard, you know, lives in between Craig and I, and he, you know, Craig, you know, when Craig shows, he rides with Howard some, and Howard rides with me some, and but Craig's a good guy, and he's you know, really good birds. I know he's made the comment before about not showing silvers as much because he wants to get his master breeder with the gold. But you have to be awful special to leave those silvers at home because it's,
Yes.
when he shows them, they're good. And somebody else that Tommy Inman, I know I mentioned Tommy there. Tommy showed some males at Anderson this year that were very good. Some of the best silver males that I have saw in a long time. Very, very good. So
Good deal.
Nice to see them.
We'll have to get them on. I need him on. I'll get with Tom Carey, and we'll get Tom on because we can talk Old English with Tom. We can talk Leggers with Tom. I mean, Tom's had everything, and good. They're good stuff. And Tom's judged, and geez, Tom's dad judged. Virgil's one of my favorite people that ever lived was Virgil Carey. What a wonderful man he was. And get them on and do some of that. But I've got it in my heart that I gotta have. Since I can't raise them damn things, and both of those gentlemen have give me stuff, and I have to give it back because I can't get them up. But the Seabright to me, if they said, Mike, you could raise 200 Seabrights a year, we can guarantee it, and you can have Seabrights, I would get rid of all the coaching, and I love coaching because something about a Seabright. Since I used to look at Elmer Wicks's and the old ones down south, and then Carl Pappert's, I've always been intrigued by it. So I've got to get them on. That's God, I hate to say he's on my bucket. How bad is my bucket? But anyway. I
have a big announcement. I didn't make it yet. I talked to Mr. Danny Pageant, and he will be on in a couple weeks. So that's another old time great breeder. Danny goes back to just when he was a kid. His dad was a breeder, and we all know great waterfowl breeder, Cornish breeder, pretty much any breed he ever grabbed a hold of, and not a real talkative guy. So I got with Norma. So Norma's going to manage the technology, and we'll get him on. But interesting because everybody wants Muscovy ducks. So Danny and Jacob Bates are my two Muscovy duck guys I go to. So I wanted to get Danny on and Jacob down the road too. We want to get past the national in Arkansas and the national in Columbus, and we'll be able to get a little more different perspective on those things. But Danny, I was glad to get him on and talk to him because lots of knowledge there that we need to get some documentation to. And
again, just good people.
Yep, good people.
And will help you. And he's good people, and he makes one hell of a big pot of rat and rice, and it's wonderful.
Rat and jaw gumbo.
So, well, Craig, listen. Look forward to seeing you.
It's that dementia.
Craig. Don't call me Craig.
No, wait a minute. I did this the other day with Paul. I called him Troy. So I won't have any friends left.
If he calls me Clell, I'm going to disconnect him.
Matthew, thanks for coming on. I had a really good time. It's good. Somebody said the other day that watching this thing is just like sitting around with us at a chicken show, and that's what we want. We don't get real technical. There's a lot of things that we should put in to say this works for us and it might not for you. And there's other things that they say that don't work, and we can just look at them and say bullshit because I've done it. So, we can go either way on that, but I'm really glad you came on, told your story. We just talked about things. Look forward to seeing you a little over a month, I reckon. You coming up to Greenville?
I'm planning on it if I can make it. I like that show. I like that. It's a good one.
It's a good show.
It's
Beautiful
show.
Fantastic
because the IWBA Nationals there. So you're going to see some, if you're down the road, if you're thinking APA stuff, you're going to see some big waterfowl that'll knock you down. And you don't get that a lot. I did get, but we'll put this in there. Wolf told me they have over 90 call ducks in the junior show at White River and 80 geese in the open show, like 70 call ducks in the open show. So a big waterfowl show coming up this weekend, 1,200 birds, I think. So that's big for water. You're looking at a 700-800 bird show normally. So they're up some.
Yep. So
that's a good sign it's the first fall show in our area. So that's a good sign that it's coming.
Yep. And then we'll see you there, and hopefully Columbus. Please be there. And other places. Matt and I will be down your way in January, Matt.
Yeah, we're at Neil's show, I think, in January.
Your show, and we got one of Jimmy Soros shows too, don't we?
We got Jimmy's and Neil's both. So one's in February, I think, and one's in January. I have to look up to be sure. But
are we
Y'all
right
doing
about that?
Y'all doing a jamboree or the all breed?
No, they all breed
March, first Saturday in March.
Okay.
March. So we're okay.
We're at Jimmy's in January, and we're somewhere else in January. February, we're somewhere too. We got one every month.
We're in Alabama, aren't we? Aren't we at Anniston for
we're at Anniston
Thompson
for
show?
Alabama Bantam Club. There's a good one if you can never sneak over to.
Yep.
They do 3 shows in one weekend.
I went when it was in Clanton one time. I drove down for that one.
Yeah, it's a little closer now. So
yeah, for
with
me.
it being in Anniston, love that show. Love those people. We always have a ball, and I get to smoke my General Grant cigars down there and feel superior.
Well, listen, we got to cut this off. It's almost an hour and a half, and I haven't ate lunch, so I'm hungry. I got to go.
Now he needs a cigar to go to the bathroom. Is what the real problem is.
I do need a cigar, and I really should go to the bathroom. So, Matthew,
All right, thanks, Matt.
Thanks a lot, man. Take care.